Hi, my name is John, and I'm presenting for OpenOUSD. Our project is to tell the story of the school district central office so that the community can better participate in conversations about what should the school district central office actually be doing. And there are two themes for this month. The first one, calling program narrative, which it's kind of like storytelling beyond just showing numbers. And then the second was community outreach, which I think is a little more straightforward. So for the narrative, our big thing this month was coming up with this short descriptions for not all the programs, but a bunch of them. And the way we did that was we were able to get access to a document of descriptions that each department manager at the school district had written about, how they would describe their own program. And the exercise we did was try to shorten them down and get them in plain English as much as possible and try to remove jargon or explain what the jargon means. So we did that, and thanks to a lot of members of the team who gave feedback on the descriptions and made them better. And then we put that up on the site, and we actually put that up yesterday. So we tweeted about it and would love your help. I don't know, engaging with it on Twitter if you're on there comfortable with it. And then the second thing was outreach. So we had a goal of reaching out to 10 people and getting 3 meetings. We only reached out to 2, but we did get 1 meeting. So we have a good batting average, but we have a lot more to do. So the 2 organizations that we talked to, one was Plan, like a parent advocacy group in Oakland. And we didn't actually meet with them, but we had like an email exchange and heard back about them working with parents from Yemen. And so interested in Arabic translation and asking what parents can do once they have the information, which was great. I don't know, feedback through engagement. And then we had the meeting with someone who works at the OUSD communications office, and the frame of the conversation was kind of like, what are you working on these days and how could this align, and who else within OUSD should we be talking to? So what we heard back is kind of everything is about COVID right now. Everything else has pretty much been paused or dropped. But the chief business officer has been doing exercises to help get community input on budget priorities, and this could maybe be a tool that she uses as part of that process. So that was a good lead. And we also did a brainstorming session just to come up with organizations that we could reach out to next. And Josh facilitated that, so thanks, Josh. So that's kind of it. So for February, I think we want to do some iteration on these descriptions. We got out what we think is a pretty good draft, but there's more tweaking and polishing that we can do with it. And then, as I mentioned, we have like bigger goals around engagement. So I'd like to get at least 2 more meetings this month, and that'll probably require reaching out to a lot more than 2 different people. If you're interested in helping, there's the outreach part and also content. So editing, writing, and we're trying to get our content into as many languages as possible. And these program descriptions that we just wrote, we don't have Spanish translation yet. So looking for help with that. That's it. And are there any questions or anything I can answer?
John, I was just curious about the narratives that you're working on. What did you say the source of those, or maybe you didn't?
Oh, yeah, I guess it's, so we got these, the district called them like 1-pagers for each program or each department. And so we got our hands on these 1-pagers. It was kind of an internal document. Each department head, so for example, like Timothy White in this case, wrote the description, and we tried to kind of whittle that down.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
we also just kind of did some research. Like if the description wasn't clear or something, we looked at the district website and other sources to try to get a sense.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Anyone else with questions for John?
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I'm next on the list, switching over to project here. Am I back up with a share?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The project is Councilmatic. Councilmatic takes the schedules, agendas, all the information that has to do with the Oakland City Council meetings, including all of the committees, and presents them in a way that we feel they're much more accessible. I've always given this presentation more from an external view looking in the past, but just to do something a little different this week, I want to give a perspective from kind of the inside out. And this project has been going on, I thought it was 4 years because I found code sources that went back 4 years. But then when I looked at the data, I found that the data goes back 7. I knew there was a complete rewrite at some point. So I'm calling it 7 years of service, because that's what it appears to be. I wasn't here at the, at the beginning, so I'm just going from documents that I'm finding. It does automated publishing of schedule information. So there's part of the program that just untouched continues to work and has done extremely well, has gotten to a point where it seems to be quite robust. It's mobile friendly, which was real important in the design. I'll show you something there in just a moment. And it also has a Twitter feed. But as we start to polish and build out, what we want to start looking at is an updated user interface. We have the design pretty much done. We need somebody to help us with the Jinja 2 templates, which are responsible for turning the data into actual pages. So that's one thing that's coming. Adding change notices is another big piece that's coming that's going to radically change the feature set within the application. There are a number of places where we just need to go back and make more modular code. Things were built as needed, and it needs a little internal redesign. And then we also need to get noticed. I looked at the Google Analytics just for January, and there aren't a lot of people using it. So hopefully we can get the word out and boost that. This is what it looks like. The URL is at the top, so it's oaklandcouncil.net is where you find it. And what it shows for anyone who goes there is the upcoming meetings, those that are current day and then later in the week. It gives you the information about the meeting. In other words, the committee that's calling the meeting. You can, if there's an agenda that's been published, it will be over there on the right-hand side. You can click on that and get the details. The meeting agenda that you see down here, if you click on that, it's a drop-down list and it will show you the individual agenda items. You can, it opens to all meetings, but if you click on that, then you can select any one of these committees and see what the committee is doing. And also, if you want to view previous meetings, this will shift and show you a year here, a year selector. So you can look back last year if you want to, and if you want to look at a specific committee, you can do so. But that's the basic look of the site as it appears on a desktop. There are two things that the program does, again, looking inside out. It acquires data, it generates static HTML. That's the automation part that just keeps going 3 times a day. It goes through this cycle. And then it serves the HTML web pages, which the serving of the pages is nothing once they've been generated. Looking at just the automation tasks, as I mentioned, we acquire the data, name the files, slice the data up by committee, and then create the static HTML. This is our source of data. This is also the source of data to anyone in the city who wants to look at it at oakland.legistar. Legistar is the name of the company that produces it, .com. And as you can see, it's not terribly user-friendly, but workable on a desktop. So you can find everything here that you can find on Councilmatic. Here's the problem, just to take a quick step out here, in that this is the way it looks on the mobile device. We know that mobile devices are more commonly used by marginal groups, marginalized groups, and also mobile is just becoming more the way of doing things. So this is the way the current site looks. This is the reason for being, to make everything much more accessible. So to step back into this flow, the automation, we don't actually pull it. We used to scrape the data, but now it's pulled through an API, fortunately. So we get a handful of data, or really we get a JSON file, which if you've ever worked, you know, it's very highly structured, very neat. All our information is there. And the technology that we run with is cron jobs fire off bash scripts. The bash scripts do the file handling and call Python code in different stages. The Python code does a heavy lifting with the JSON code, slicing it up and preparing it. Something to mention, anyone who just may want to look at historical data, we store entire files each time we pull down. We pull down everything that's available for the year, but then we also store the previous year and the year before that, and we go back to 2014. If anyone at any time has any project where they could use the past data, it's good to know that we have it, you know, and we could easily pull that for you. So here's an example of what happens with all our data for 2021, which is just January and starting into February. Python sends it through the Jinja templating, and we build pre-build individual pages for all meetings, and then each of the 8 committees that are currently recognized for the city. The change notification that I mentioned over on the left-hand side, this is just like we've done before. It's a current data pull. What's going to be different is we'll always keep the last data pull, and then Python will do our processing. From this, we'll go item by item through the JSON file and find where the changes are and identify those. And then the change information will be matched to user subscription information. Again, Python doing the work there. And any change that has been requested by a user will be matched. An email will be created, sent over to Mailgun that will actually send out the email. So like I say, that's what's coming. This is what we're dealing with right now at the moment. We have the change programming in place. But this gives you an idea of what it's identifying. An event is a meeting. So this event ID for Rules and Legislation Committee. And here's what changed. Event, minutes, status, ID. It was changed from 1 to 2. That's meaningless for an end user. So what we're doing now is just starting through this and identifying which of those items we should just completely filter out and which ones we need to change into more understandable language. So we're going to be there for a while. If you want to join us for any of that work or see how it's done, do please stop by. So the opportunities for help, I moved SEO to the top here. Again, we have this system that's working, it's functioning, it's producing regularly. It would be nice if more people knew about it. So if anyone, even if you just have a little bit of SEO knowledge and want to try applying it in maybe an SEO survey, feel free, come by. We'll give you access to everything and be real interested in what you find. I mentioned building out the new UI or UX. The skill there that we're really looking for is the Jinja 2 templating. I've never worked with it. So we're always hoping that someone, even if you want to stop by for some advising, that would be appreciated. Building out the change notification is going to be a long process, probably over the next 6 months. And then there is just a couple items of data that we found that are not in the API that if we want, we're going to need to scrape those off the spreadsheet that you saw. If you'd like to do some of that work, we got that sitting and waiting. Just a quick summary. the Twitter handle if you want to follow meetings, the Slack channel if you want to follow the project, GitHub if you want to look at any of the code. I lost it there for a moment. Website, and please join us. So with that, are there any questions that I can answer on this? No questions. Okay, then I have to switch back to my list. And we should have, there we go. That should be visible to everyone. It's the WOAQ, West Oakland Air Quality. Brooks, are you ready to take over there?
Sure, thank you, Tom. See if I can get my screen up here.
There it is.
Okay, great, thank you. Stop my video. All right, so West Oakland Air Quality, for those who may not already know, is focused on making air quality data more accessible to the residents of West Oakland. Why West Oakland? Why this part of the city? Mainly because West Oakland is really disproportionately affected by air pollution relative to other neighborhoods in the city. And we're working with, here, let me show screen here. Sorry, I should have done this so that I could turn on captions. And there we go. So as I was starting to say, we work very closely with our partner, the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project, which is a community-based environmental justice organization that is actually working on a lot of different projects, and one of which is this air quality project that we're partnering with them on. And so we try to work very closely with them. They have, since 2010, they started collecting air quality data in the neighborhood using 3 different devices that they acquired, including these mobile dust track sensors that can take measurements of the amount of particulate matter in the air. And so they've been collecting this data for the past decade. And what we are doing is to help them with making this data accessible by building a web application, which you see a screenshot of here. And so basically what the application is able to do, at least at the moment, it's obviously still in process, is that you can load the data that was collected by those sensors from our partner organization. You can basically load the data from one of those sessions. So the volunteers from the partner organization would go out and walk around the neighborhood collecting that data, and that would go into that would be one session of data. And so on the app, you can load that session. As you can see here, it shows the date, start time, who the data was collected by, the device, etc., and displays it in a geospatial format as a map. And so this is what we're in the process of building. We have also conducted, and this was before my time, but quite a lot of user research. And again, working through the partner organization, the Environmental Indicators Project, to work with members of the community to figure out how to improve the functionality of the app and the kind of ways in which we can make this data meaningful for the community. And so the main purpose here is not simply just to kind of for us to analyze the data for for the neighborhood, for the community, but rather we have an educational purpose really for the app, which is to teach residents how they can derive meaningful insights from the data. So it's really kind of an educational or pedagogical rather than simply analytical purpose for displaying and visualizing this data. And to that end, so we've been working on a number of things recently, but one of them is to sort of work with these visualizations and to make them a little bit more meaningful than what I showed you before on the sort of early version of the web application. So what I'll show you here is sort of a less polished presentation. This is more sort of just a raw work in progress. And so we've been sort of playing around with the visualizations of the data. And so what you're looking at here is the visualization of one session in which volunteers collected data walking around the neighborhood with the dust track sensor. Here you see the GPS location as they walked through the neighborhood, just mapped out. And here's what this looks like if you add a base map. And again, this is just the geographical location. Then we started to add in some color coding based on the air quality measurements. And so if the air quality measurements, if the particulate matter in the air is high, you're going to get red. And if not, you're going to get blue. Problem, of course, here is that it's almost all blue. And there's just a few areas here where you have higher levels of pollutants. So we tried to play around with the color schemes and the binning of the data. And in a few different configurations. And so here we get to something that's a little bit more clear where it is in the neighborhood that the worst air quality was detected during this session by essentially making the markers larger and changing the color based on the value of the measurement from the device and setting a threshold for that. But these are all static maps. So what if we want to make these maps more interactive, more educational? So we can, as you can see here, with this interactive map, you can zoom in on, this gives you a better sense of where we are within Oakland. So here's the lake, here's the area from this session in West Oakland, and it's right around, if we zoom in, you can see that this is right around the West Oakland BART station. So here again, though, we are just seeing the GPS location and not the level of air quality pollutants. And so here's an interactive version that allows you to play around with the map, zoom in and out, and also gives you tooltips for showing the actual measurement. If you hold your cursor over it, we can see here that the level of pollutants is at 0.157, whereas over here, we're at on a very different magnitude at 0.012. So these are just some of the ways that we're starting to think about how to visualize the data in ways that can make it meaningful, where insights can be derived from this. But again, this is very preliminary, and we have other ideas about what we'd like to do. We'd like to smooth out some of these lines on the streets. We'd like to have other interactive elements where we could, layer the map with, for example, trucks that are stopping in the neighborhood and, emitting pollutants as they sort of sit and contributing to these big red spots here. And, the question is really, by looking at these kinds of maps and visualizations, can we figure out why, right? This area has such a worse air quality than the area just right next to it, right? In any case, that's what we are, one of the things that we're working on at the moment. And let me finish up the last part here, which is that, so we could use help in a number of different areas. One is we could use help with customizing the semantic UI design system. We also need help setting up user accounts, adding indicators when saving data. So a lot on the engineering side, but also tweaking the user interface to display a device name. And you also can see the other members of our team here, led by the fearless Jess, who I'm sure most of you know. And that's it. Let me know if there are any questions I can help with.
Thank you, Brooks. Anyone with questions? I know as I was looking at this, I was wondering, you're doing a great job with the visualization. Have you had an opportunity yet where maybe the data was entered as evidence for a permitting process or anything like that?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Entered as a permitting process. Do you mean?
Let's say a company wanted to expand or something like that in the area. I was wondering if you've had a chance to actually use the data, submit it as part of a process like that.
I'll let Jess take that question. Okay.
So yes, actually, in a way. So this is all, the data we're working with right now is all historical data that they've already collected. Right. And that data actually was used to drive further research and government-sponsored research around hotspots in the neighborhood and emission sources. And so West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project has actually been spearheading, based on a lot of this data, actual policy changes and community development work with the city and county based on the outcome and sort of modeling that they've done that sort of has been built on this initial data set. So the idea here is that when they started out, this data hadn't been collected at all at the block by block level. And as neighborhood residents were like, well, you know, there's only one sensor that's stationary in West Oakland, and it's telling us that the air seems like it's better than most of us are experiencing it. That doesn't seem right. So the residents started collecting this data on their own by just taking these sensors in their backpacks and walking and recording around the neighborhood. And that allowed them to actually start to see, no, in fact, different areas in the neighborhood have different levels of air quality depending on where you are, time of day, what's going on in the environment. And because there are so many trucking businesses, because of the historical policies around industrializing that neighborhood, because it's a historically Black neighborhood, lower income, and has been really, the city has, over the decades, has really done a number on that neighborhood in particular in terms of development, industrialization. And so that's sort of the larger context. And this citizen collected data has allowed them to drive more research and actually implement real policy changes that are happening now. And tomorrow night, if people are interested, tomorrow night, you can check out the WOAQ channel for the link to the steering committee meeting for this work, where they'll talk about the progress that they've been making.
Outstanding. Thanks, Jess. Okay, the last presentation, I'm assuming there are no other questions. Interrupt me if there were. Okay, the last presentation this evening, and I'm sorry I estimated the time wrong because the last one is very important. La Escuelita, Laurel, as we heard before, is finishing up. The project is finishing up. She's been heading it. She's had a great team with her. And I asked her to take a little more time to give a picture of the project now that it's done, looking back. What have we learned? So Laurel, kind of turn over to you.
Yes, and so I kind of structured this a little bit like a retrospective. At Tom's suggestion, I thought that was kind of an interesting switch from the updates. And since you all have heard a decent amount from me, some of my teammates are going to share some of their contributions as well. I want to make sure I'm sharing this correctly. Jess, I saw the bit about how we get captions going.
Doing it. If you go into present mode,
Okay.
it'll give you a toolbar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then there should be a button on the toolbar that says captions.
Toolbar. Ah, here we go. Okay. Do we see captions? Yes.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so we presented the site a little bit at the last demo night. This is what it looks like. You can go to the URL there if you would like to check it out. I thought it would be helpful just to start with the original intention of the project. It was really around boosting the school's enrollment numbers since their funding is tied to enrollment and they didn't have a website. So people were kind of just driving by the school, doing drop-in tours. That's how they were enrolling students. And then as we started doing teacher interviews, it became clear there was a need to have better communication between the school itself and their community. So, families and just the wider community that they're in. And then of course, COVID hit and that changed everything. And so, there was an even greater need to have an online resource where there's remote learning links, parent resources. The school also provides a lot of services like healthcare, meal assistance, technology assistance, and then just teacher contacts. So all of that needing to be in one place as they're going fully remote. So here's a bit of our team. We have Alyssa on UX, Anwana on dev, Erin, who kind of had to drop off after this past semester, but was with us for a while and was our voice for a public school teacher. So couldn't be here tonight, but I'll tell you a little bit about her contributions, and then myself. So Anwana, do you want to take over?
Yeah, let me, oh cool, the captions are working. Okay. Hi everyone, glad to be here. Again, my name's Anwana, and I was the dev lead for the La Escuelita project. Just to get started, in the very beginning, some of the things we were researching were, website builders that were, I guess, best suited for the job. And, we had to keep in mind, when we handed off this La Escuelita site, we wanted to make sure that the website builder was somewhat intuitive and easy to navigate and not too complicated. And so we narrowed it down to Wix, Squarespace, and I believe Weebly. And we kind of liked some of the options, but again, there's also just the added cost. And we were definitely taking into account the costs and making sure it wasn't too much. So we finally narrowed it down to Google Sites because interestingly enough, the site prior to the one that we built, that was called DigiGeneration. That was also using a Google Sites implementation. So that was good to know. It's totally free. A lot of nice built-in integration with just the various Google services. So that was nice to know. And so from there, we started to just gather content and just begin to get involved with, the teacher interviews and just make sure we're gathering information and content. And from here, we were learning more about Google Sites and just their template system. And some of this was my part to kind of just educate the rest of the team on how the service works and making sure they get some comfortability working with it as well. So that was nice too. And yeah, I want to say we just, were persistent and determined in getting this job done and making sure that, the site looked good on various devices, which is just another nice thing that Google Sites offers as far as being responsive various devices. And yeah, as we began working and getting closer to the launch date, we were working closely with La Escuelita staff. I don't want to leave out any names, but there was quite a few. We had the principal, Ferris. We had additional staff members, Olivia, and forgetting one off the top of my head.
I think Connie was the other one
Connie.
who kind of originally introduced the project to OpenOakland.
Yeah, and Connie. So there was a lot of just various individuals helping us out and providing us with the information that we need to do the best job that we could. And yeah, coming down to it, just connecting the site was a bit of a technical exploration, but it was nice to know because I really am like, I'll scour the internet for the answer for these types of things. So that was fun figuring that out. Not to get too technical, but it kind of required verifying the custom domain for Google Sites and making sure that, hey, you know, this Gmail account that's tied to this Google Sites, this is me. And so, you know, I need to be authorized to publish this Google Sites on this custom domain. That's where the technical nuts and bolts comes in. So that was pretty much my contribution to the project, and I'm super happy with the end result.
Awesome. All right, next we have Alyssa.
Hi, everyone.
Here?
Yeah, so I led with Laurel a lot of the research for the website, and then Juana participated, and Erin was able to be in some of the initial research as well. So it was really nice to like have everyone in the team involved in, you know, understanding like our findings from our school and, you know, being really clear on what our priorities were. Yeah, so we were able to talk to a couple of teachers and other people from the school to understand what their needs were from a website. And then our efforts to talk to parents, unfortunately, were just often blocked or just sort of failures due partly to pandemic. Right before March, we had been planning to go to a school event and do a card sort with parents and talk to them, which obviously got canceled sort of right at the key moment when we wanted feedback from parents before we just started making up like what we thought would be a good navigation system and good language to use on the website. And that was sort of one of our biggest challenges, was really struggling with getting feedback from these specific parents. Despite, you know, a couple connections from teachers and reaching out directly. But we had a lot of good information just from other school websites we looked at, and from the teachers themselves and the content that they, you know, were asked about by families, et cetera. Yeah, so that was a great effort, and that informed a lot of the sort of stuff that went into the site building. Like, we need to be able to host this in multiple languages. Ideally, it needs to be really mobile friendly because a lot of the families don't necessarily have computers at home. They have intermittent, you know, mobile access with like, sometimes they have data, sometimes they don't. They might be looking at it on a public computer, something like that. Yeah, and then after we sort of, you know, I think a lot of the work we did after school started up after the summer was getting content from the school to figure out like what is the information you need to put on the website, because they had a lot of it already, just in terms of, okay, they have a list of all the teachers and the curriculum for each grade and, you know, resources for families like technology access. So getting all of that from them, organizing that was also a pretty solid team effort, and just sort of editing it, getting into formats that made sense for Google Sites and for mobile usage. Yeah, and putting it all together in a nice layout. Yeah. That's what I can say about that.
Awesome. Okay. we will go to Erin, and Anwana and Alyssa, feel free to chime in on anything here. Erin couldn't make it tonight. We invited her, but she's just been swamped. Since none of the rest of us were teachers, her perspective was very critical. She was pretty adamant about having things like accessibility baked in from the beginning, which I think just was informative for all of us to know how important that was, and certain things that were just standard and expected among kind of the public education sphere. So having that lens was really, really critical, and just guiding our own team with that lens, and how to reach out to teachers, and understanding what this whole pandemic was like for them to have to overnight switch to virtual learning, just to really have empathy for what our teachers are going through, and how necessary having access to these digital tools was.
Yeah, Erin played a pivotal, role just in the project. It was really I really valued just the thoughtfulness that she had for just the students that she saw on a daily basis. Because I think there's just naturally like a lot of things that you tend to overlook when designing websites. And just the accessibility portion was super valuable. And, she even, kind of educated me on like a Google Chrome extension to check accessibility amongst, websites. So that was super helpful. But yeah, she was definitely like a great team player for this project. And it was super awesome to know that she was able to help out. So she's here in spirit.
Yeah, even just sort of guiding us on terminology that teachers were using when we talked to them, and school holidays and what was going on. Yeah, she had a lot of good information that really was just crucial to us to sort of understand the context of what we were working in, and help us just like know better what we had to build. Like, she was the first one who was, again, I think I want to mention this, but like the required accessibility standards for public sites and for school sites. So yeah, she was a crucial part of this project.
Yeah, absolutely. And was kind of there at that foundational stage, and things that like I personally didn't know about the accessibility requirements, and things that really helped, just build a strong foundation for us. You all have heard from me multiple times, so I'm the project lead. Did various things, but scoping the project, coordinating the different work streams, helping out with the teacher interviews, and then a lot really just with stakeholder communications, especially as we were getting content in, and just the back and forth with making modifications and trying to streamline that so our stakeholders didn't have to communicate with everyone. So I took the framework here of kind of what worked well and what we could have improved upon. So the team was just really awesome. I think Alyssa described pretty well some of the challenges that we encountered. And so the pandemic just really interrupted a lot of our intentions with research. It delayed things a lot. And so people just had to scramble and do different things at different times. And everyone was so flexible with that and willing to learn and just help out where needed, which is so awesome. Our community partner was also just really supportive. They tapped us in and connected us to everyone that they could, teachers, parents. We talked to the principal. They also helped create a lot of the content, which anyone who's launched a website knows that that's a beast of the work. And so that was really great. And then a huge thing that worked in our favor that Anwana kind of went over was just choosing Google Sites really helped us. I don't know if I appreciated how much it helped us, and I have to hand it to Anwana for doing such a thorough audit of these other tools that we could have used, and ultimately deciding Google Sites was the way to go. It integrated with the school's existing platform. It made it super easy for us to learn. Anwana kind of gave us an interview in a couple minutes. It made it easy to do handoff. It made it easy to do the file transferring. There was just so many things that ended up being a great decision, and just making things better. And then the consistent feedback I get on the website is just so much love for these Bitmojis. This is, instead of doing staff photos, they made all their staff create Bitmojis, and they're really cute. Some things that were challenging, as I mentioned, COVID-related school closures. It just put an enormous burden on the entire education community. And we really were planning to do in-person intercepts kind of when there was a school event, so we could just get parents really quickly. And it was just so hard to get a hold of parents otherwise, for very understandable reasons. Alyssa touched on this, but we improvised by relying on teacher interviews, the teacher feedback, and also doing competitive analysis with other schools. That of course impacted the timeline of this project. It was supposed to launch last April, which obviously it did not. You know, teachers are super busy last spring. They are off over summer and needed a well-deserved break. So the actual building of the site probably didn't start until this fall, where we started actually putting pieces together, the content and the assets into the templates. And so recruiting for research just proved to be really difficult. Alyssa did a really tireless job with this. We did multiple pushes. We had a survey in 3 languages on the interim site they put up. We got introductions through the principal. We started emailing teachers directly. We really tried to hit it in every direction, and it still was just really tough to get the feedback that we were hoping for. So some learning and takeaways just from that, you know, I have to kind of hand it to La Escuelita for this wasn't really their fault. There's a massive pandemic going on, but one thing that could have been good was just to communicate our own availability early on, since the nature of volunteer work, you might have availability at one point, 18 months later, that might look different. And so I wonder if us communicating that more upfront could have kept us a little closer to the timeline, but of course, circumstances were pretty extreme. And then I do wonder if we could have taken advantage more of this community itself with OpenOakland, and also tapping into Code for America around just how to recruit parents in a virtual environment. And I know there's conversations, we've had conversations at the organization level about, you know, how do we improve that? And there's been previous efforts. So just seeing and feeling the difficulties that we had, to me shows that this might be a muscle that we want to strengthen as an organization. And just some next steps for us and how you might plug in. One thing we did want to test is how the automated translation is working. So if there's any native Spanish speakers or Mandarin speakers, or you know anyone who is and wants to test that out, that would be a huge help. We also just kind of scrapped all of La Escuelita's actual content and duplicated the template. And so we are trying to share that externally. I have to make sure I'll share that from the correct project folder if that's the okay place to do any external sharing. And then with John Baldo, your project with OUSD, it would be great to just get a connection into that group. And of course, for anyone else working on that project or any other introductions you might be able to make, we can share the templatized site if there's other schools that are looking for help. And yeah, I think that's it. You can check out the site if you haven't seen it already. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thanks for listening, everyone. Cool.
That's amazing. Those lessons are super helpful. The research thing in particular, I know this has come up before. You know, we had an active CUT group, civic user testing group, yes, for quite a while back in the day. And that has sort of been on ice for a long time. You know, one thing I could have seen, for example, maybe we could have done was even like paid social media ads for recruiting survey respondents, like, because you can get so targeted with that stuff, like geolocation, demographic, et cetera, like that might have been a way to support, since we have that kind of budget for testing. So I guess I think that's probably something we could take up in steering committee as a discussion item of sort of like, how might we get cut group back and active? I mean, it requires obviously people with skills, like research skill sets, to help run it and kind of direct people. And I know that there's some DIY material available, but making that more visible and accessible. So I'll bet I can, in fact, even just adding a link to the website, I am making a note right now to create an issue for that. We might have some on there, but I'll have to double check. So even that might be a nice first step.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm sure there's other things we could have done, but just multiple attempts to get through. And of course we wanted them to be really targeted. We wanted the actual parents. I realized we probably could have done parallel groups, but it felt important to talk to the actual community and yeah, just things to think about as a whole organization, you know, because the people that might be easiest to reach may not be the ones that, you know, that we want to be listening to and shaping products around. And so I think our team was well aware of that, and despite that, you know, still encountered some challenges with it.
Any other questions?
Just a quick question. I was just wondering if OUSD itself has given any feedback in terms of like, well, this was a, you know, this is a great way to build websites for schools. Like, I think that's what they should be saying, but, you know, it would be nice if they would recognize this work, and, you know, maybe that template could become something that is used throughout the district. Is there any chance of that happening?
So we actually haven't been in touch with them at all. We've just been working with Escuelita. So that's our next step, is to reach out to it. And I'll like feed them your quote about this being, you know, a great way to do everything.
Oh yeah. Thanks.
Okay, Laurel and Juana, Alyssa, impressed. Can we give them a hand?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for doing this review of the project. It was very informative, very helpful.
Awesome.
And share. Jess, I'll get to you in just a moment here so you can review the your work.
Also, Alina wanted to, I think Open Disclosure wanted to share too, if they want to go next. I'm fine. That's cool.
Yeah, just a quick update from us. Open Disclosure.
Yes. I'm going to pull off. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Oh boy. Share the screen.
There it is.
Nope, that is the wrong button.
Oh.
There we go. All right, just one slide. Open Disclosure has been pretty quiet the last few months, as we traditionally do after elections. We, just in short, Open Disclosure is all about campaign finance data. We collect campaign finance data for the local Oakland elections, and we've been doing so since 2014. And then we take that data and we publish it and we visualize it in ways that the public can understand, so Oakland residents can have a look at the money coming into their election and make informed choices. You can find us on our Slack channel, Project Open Disclosure, and that's the best place to find us. So if this is interesting to you, that is a good place to just ping the group. And you can also have a look at our live site. It's opendisclosure.io. So you can poke around and you can see all the up-to-date campaign finance data there for our last election that happened this last November. So as I said, it's been pretty quiet since the election was completed, but we have some new data that's becoming available to us through OAQ data. That is the resource that is at the Oakland City level that basically publishes data, city data, and makes it available for us to use. So we have some new data coming in around spending by lobbyists and something called behested payments. I put a note for myself. That basically this is large donations that are from third parties to organizations, but made at the request of a public official. Complicated, I know, but we're going to see how we're going to work that data into our site to even give a more holistic scope of the money that is in elections, because it's basically like weird favor money. That's how I'm going to summarize it. So I think our plan is to get together next week and chat about what's coming available on Oak Data and how we might be able to use it, what would be useful to people. So we're really in the early stages of discussion. This isn't an election year, as everyone knows. So open disclosure is kind of quiet until we hit an election year, and then it's a big rush, but we're gonna see what we can integrate into our platform in these quiet years, especially sort of a lot of the data that we haven't really had the opportunity to share yet. So that's the plan. So if you have questions or you're interested in open disclosure, come poke on by our Slack channel and let us know that maybe this is something for you, or you can just ask a question or whatever, no pressure. And we're probably going to be chatting next week. And that's all from me.
Elena, thanks so much. Any quick questions here? Okay, then. So Jess, we're at announcements. Did you go ahead? You wanted some time here?
Great. So I need you to stop sharing so I can share my screen. Thanks. Okay. So let's see if Chrome will let me. Oh, right. Chrome doesn't give me captions when I'm not in a slide deck. So this is our mural board. If you go to OO Meta channel in Slack, you will find links that are pinned, and they're also the most recent messages to all this material. Essentially, the theory of change work that's been going on is a brigade initiative, effort, project, whatever language you want to use. It's been ongoing since the end of last year. And the idea is to refine our theory of change, which and try to define a little bit better our mission, which is a little vague. You know, we talk about, interesting. Not sure why that's loading like that. But our mission is, you know, bridging technology and community for a thriving and equitable Oakland, but we don't really define what thriving and equitable means. And so our theory of change is an attempt to define that a little bit better. What is that outcome that we're hoping to achieve specifically, as well as what does it take to get there, and what role does Open Oakland play in that change based on our own resources and capabilities and values and contexts. And so various members of leadership and members have been coming together over several workshop sessions to put our heads together and explore this. So our first workshop really was answering some questions around just trying to surface information. So what are we good at as a brigade? What are our strengths? What are our sort of, where's our knowledge and expertise lie? What kind of outputs and outcomes are we best at producing? As well as, of course, the flip side of that, which is what do we need to improve? What do we want to be better at? And then stepping back a little and looking at externalities. And I'm just breezing through some of this early work, and I'll get to the sort of latest outputs in a second. So what does a thriving and equitable Oakland look like? How do we define that? How do we get specific about what that actually means? And then once we know that, once we have the answers to that and some alignment, what are the things that have to happen in the city, within our brigade, in general, as in our local government, in order for those things, for those outcomes to be accomplished. So we did this initial surfacing. There was a fair amount of alignment that's been summarized in a recap document that you'll find in OO Meta with some of the core themes that came out of that first workshop. And then we took a second workshop and we had a little bit more of a sort of open-ended discussion where we explored, again, different themes that we had initially touched on and aligned on around that definition of thriving and equitable. So for example, there was a lot of alignment on particular outcomes being that race, gender, disability, and other personal identifiers are not indicators of well-being outcomes. So that's one way to recognize that Oakland has become thriving and equitable, as well as those most impacted by government policy are actively guiding it, which kind of speaks to the civic engagement aspect that we've always been so focused on. And then this one came up a fair amount in different ways, but ultimately it sort of boils down to celebrating what makes our community members unique and actually using the diversity that we find in Oakland to strengthen relationships of solidarity. Whereas I think a lot of times what we see is you know, the sort of flip side is that inequity and inequitable outcomes. So what we do with theory of change is we kind of work backwards from the outcomes once we've defined them and look at the levers that we want to pull to achieve this stuff. And so what we've got here is actually a little bit of a flow chart. And this is very rough draft. And the idea here is that we start with the outcomes. Once we have the defined outcomes, we look at, okay, so in order to make this stuff happen, some things have to be in place. We need visibility into the inequities. Those inequities need to be identified. What are they? What do they look like? How do they manifest in Oakland among different communities? We need understanding, right? So Oaklanders need to understand how the local government works. One thing that came up in some of our conversation was around this idea that in Oakland, actually, a lot of policy and development and decision-making that happens at the county level that sort of pushes down and impacts Oakland in a very direct way. And so a lot of civic engagement work may need to be not just at the city level, but at the county level in order to be effective. And we also need Oaklanders to actually want to be involved. They need a reason to be involved in this process, in the civic process, in order for change to happen. As well as access, so being able to access funding, opportunities, and having that access be distributed equitably, as well as influence, so that, and the way this kind of surface, and some of this language may need to be tweaked. So again, this is rough, but the idea that there's more equitable representation at the decision-making level, which will then lead to things like those who are most impacted by policy being able to actually contribute to that policy. So you start to see this sort of direct line from one thing to the next. And then agency, Oaklanders feeling their personal identities are honored and respected and actually having the ability to have an influence. And so then from there, what we do is we look at our own realities in the brigade itself, and we say, all right, well, given that, what are the activities we do as a brigade that actually feed these pillars, feed these pillars of change? And those activities are also informed by our realities. So on the left here, we have in the blue, we have our contexts, our individual brigade contexts. This like who we are as a brigade, what is our makeup? And this is just captures some of the diversity that we see, but we're not just coders, right? There's designers and researchers, data analysts, folks who are new to technology, folks who just live in the neighborhood and want to have an influence on their, at the local level, advocates, et cetera. We have documented and undocumented members, people who speak different languages, different ages, genders, et cetera. And so figuring out how do we sort of blend all that in a way that allows each of those different kinds of folks to contribute And then, what unites us is this shared value system. And these are extracted from the stuff that we've outlined previously these live on the website. You can go to OpenOakland.org to see what our documented values are, and that those have been developed over time by membership. And so you kind of put it all together and you get this, what this leads to is really a way to guide our decision-making about how we do what we do. It helps us decide what projects to take on. It helps us decide how to recruit. It helps us decide how to measure the impact that we're having, like how to know that we're actually accomplishing what we say we want to accomplish. And all of those things obviously are really, really critical, particularly because our resources are limited. So that's where we're at. We have this rough draft theory of change. It still needs work and input. And so everybody here is welcome to share your thoughts, your ideas, ask questions, challenge this. Like I said, OO Meta channel in Slack is probably the best place to sort of actively engage in that conversation. We don't have a workshop scheduled yet. I will add a doodle scheduling calendar thing to that channel in the next week. If you're interested in participating in an upcoming workshop, drop a note either to me or in the channel, and I will let you know. And I'll stop there.